Hey everybody, today I want to tell you about the Hovsco HovRanger electric mountain bike. It's right here, it's a ton of fun to ride, so stay tuned and we'll tell you all about it. So first of all, Hovsco did send this to me for review. However, they have not influenced what I say about it, so this is my honest opinion. I'm going to tell you whether I think it's worth buying or not. And I'm going to say right off the bat, I do like this bike. Of all the e-bikes I've done, and it's been quite a few now, this is probably in the top 25% of bikes that I've ridden for e-bikes. And I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why. First of all, it truly looks and feels like a mountain bike. It doesn't have fenders, at least this version I have doesn't have fenders. It doesn't have a lot of extra stuff on it that like a rack, which I think you can get a rack for it, but I like it without it because this to me looks and feels more like a regular mountain bike. It's got 27.5 by 2.3 inch tires, which are pretty standard mountain bike tires these days. And the tires are rated for an e-bike, which is something you definitely want to have. I kind of like these tires over the 4-inch fat tires that a lot of e-bikes have because they fit into my bike rack. And again, it feels more like you're riding a regular bicycle. This bike comes in two colors, an indigo blue, which is what I have here, and a dark gray. You can order them on the website, and it's about $1,500 US on the website. I think I might have a discount code if you check it out, but overall, again, it's kind of in that mid-price range at $1,500 for an e-bike. This bike, while heavy for a bike, is light for an e-bike. It's about 56 pounds, which again, seems like a lot for a bicycle, but when you compare it to some of these bigger e-bikes, it's actually not bad to put up onto a rack or to put in the back of your vehicle or whatever. This is actually one of the easier e-bikes that I've assembled. It doesn't have a lot of extra parts and it comes mostly assembled. So in terms of putting it together, I found it to be fairly easy. Now I've assembled a lot of e-bikes in my day, and so I've gotten better at it. So maybe that's part of the reason it felt easy. But compared to some other bikes, this one actually was in the easier category to assemble. So after I got it assembled, I decided to take it out for a little test ride and just see how everything felt. And for some reason, I couldn't get it to go more than about 6 or 7 miles an hour without really pedaling, and that was just me doing all the work. It turns out you have to download the Hovsco app and activate it in order to go up to 20 miles an hour, and then if you want to go even faster, there is a way to unlock it, which I'll show you in a different video. But know that if you assemble it and don't get the app and don't activate it and go out to ride, it's going to feel really slow because you have to activate it before it will actually start riding like an e-bike. One other reason I really like this bike is because it will support up to 300 pounds and it has a good geometry for a big guy like me. I find that some of these bikes, you're down too low and your knees are coming way up when you pedal. This one has an adjustable seat that allows you to get it high enough to be able to pedal it smoothly. And the geometry of the handlebars, the seat, the pedals, everything feels pretty good for me as a fairly tall and fairly big guy riding this thing. Like I said, up to 300 pounds capacity. It's funny because their website actually says 450 pounds in one point and 300 pounds in another place, but I'm going to go with the 300 pounds, which luckily I'm not quite there. So this bike holds me just fine. Now, another reason I like this bike is it has a lot of little extras, like a quick release on the seat, which some of these bike companies don't put a quick release on the seat, and therefore you have to have a tool to raise and lower the seat every time. I find that ridiculous. Every bike should have a quick release, and this one does. The grips are really nice on this bike. My wife even commented how comfortable they were and that she likes the way the brakes feel on the grips. The button is really nice. The screen is really bright. Everything about it is well done for this kind of bike in this price range. It has a 500-watt motor, and we'll come back to that in just a little bit. And it also has a 48-volt battery, which is a pretty standard battery size. Some e-bike manufacturers are going to bigger voltage on their batteries, which gives you a little bit more power. And some e-bike manufacturers are using bigger motors than a 500, which also gives you more power. This one's on the lower end of that. So it's not going to be great for super steep hills if you're pretty heavy and you're not pedaling much. For just riding around town or doing a paved trail or even a little bit of off-road riding, the 500-watt motor and the 48-volt battery do just fine. Now, according to Hovsco's website, this can go about 60 miles on a single charge. I have not tried to go that far on a single charge. I have not also had any instance where I've ridden it very far and the battery's gone down very much at all. So I do imagine it probably has a pretty good range, but that's really going to depend on how much you pedal, how hilly it is, how much you weigh, and a lot of other factors. So don't count on that 60-mile range, but just know that it's got a decent range for traveling without having to recharge the battery. And speaking of batteries, this is supposed to have a Samsung/LG battery in it, which that brand name to me means that this isn't just some generic battery. It's been thought through, and that's going to make a big difference in the battery life and in how many times you can charge and recharge it, its reliability, its safety, all those kind of things. There is a key that allows you to remove the battery if you want to do that, if you need to take it inside, if it's really cold or hot in the garage or storage area where it is. That's not a bad idea. Just know that this has a higher end battery, which is going to give you more charge cycles than a cheaper battery would. So just like a lot of these bikes, this has a 7-speed shifter. It's got Shimano components up here, although it has Zoom brakes and Shimano shifters, and this says Tourney on the derailleur. So I don't really know what all those parts are. I can tell you that generally the parts and components on bikes like these, especially shifters, are not that great. They're usually lower end in order to keep the cost down. But because it's an e-bike, it doesn't matter that much. I don't find myself shifting out of 5th gear very much. I keep it right in the middle, 4, 5, 6, maybe sometimes 3. But for the most part, I'm never in gear 1 or in gear 7 because I don't need to be, because the electric part takes care of the rest of it for me. But know that the components are not bad, but they're certainly not high end. Now, one thing I do really like about this bike is that it has hydraulic disc brakes. When you're looking at e-bikes, you want to make sure it has disc brakes, and ideally hydraulic disc brakes, not mechanical disc brakes. For e-bikes, they tend to be heavier, they tend to get going faster and have a lot of momentum. So you want to have brakes that are going to give you lots of stopping power. And hydraulic disc brakes with 180 millimeter rotors like this has plenty of stopping power, even for a big guy like me. And of course, it has all those little extras that a lot of these bikes have. It has a kickstand, it has an integrated headlight, it has a battery-powered tail light that you can use if you want to at nighttime, but it's not integrated. It does have a front shock absorber, which gives you a little bit smoother ride, especially if you're riding over bumpy gravel or off-road or anything like that. And it's got 5 levels of pedal assist, so you can really pick the level that you want. So I want to tell you the 4 main reasons that I like this bike. First of all, I like the way it looks, and by that I mean I like that it looks like a mountain bike, it feels like a mountain bike. It has 27.5-inch tires, which is very much in line with a mountain bike. They're not crazy fat, they're just standard mountain bike tires. I love that about it. I'd much rather have a bike like this than one of those big fat tire bikes that weighs 1,000,000 pounds. And again, this one only weighs about 56 pounds, which is way less than most e-bikes of its comparable size and price. Number 2, I like the fact that it has hydraulic disc brakes. That's a big thing for me, to be able to stop safely, and hydraulic disc brakes with this size rotor really make a big difference. So make sure you get hydraulic disc brakes. This one has it. Number 3, I like the torque sensor. I much prefer bikes with torque sensors. The way a torque sensor works is when you pedal, it takes the amount of pedaling you do and gives you that much power. Whereas with a cadence sensor, as soon as you start pedaling, it just gives you as much power as it has in that pedal assist mode. I prefer a torque sensor because it feels more like you're riding a regular bike, but I'm going to talk about this torque sensor in just a minute on the flip side of what I don't like. And finally, like I said, putting this thing together was super easy, and that is a big plus for me because if you haven't put e-bikes together, there's some little tips and tricks that you have to know about it, and this one didn't have any real big gotchas when I put it together. Now I want to tell you the 2 things that I wish they had improved a little bit on this bike. Number 1 is back to that torque sensor. It is a torque sensor, but it's not very smooth in low speeds. As you're pedaling in low speeds, it kind of goes on and off. And you can tell it's a cheaper torque sensor because those tend to do that. Do I like it better than a cadence sensor? Yes, because those also will kind of go on and off as you start to pedal. And also as you get going a little faster, the torque sensor smooths out nicely. So if you're going 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, it's going to feel very smooth. But when you're first starting, you'll feel that little jitteriness of the torque sensor. That's because it's just not as good a torque sensor. On a more high-end e-bike, when you start pedaling with a torque sensor, you feel just that little tiny bit of power and it's very smooth, whereas this one at low speed is not very smooth. And then number 2, I wish it had a bigger motor. It's got a 500-watt motor. For most things you're gonna do, and especially if you live in a flat area and you're fairly lightweight, 500 watts is gonna be plenty. But if you live in a hilly area like I do and you're heavier, a 500-watt motor may not do the trick on some hills. You may have to really work to get up some of those hills. But that's kind of why I like this bike too, because I like the fact that you get a little exercise. With a 500-watt motor, you might get more exercise than you would with a bigger motor. So that's it. That's the Hovsco HovRanger 27.5 electric mountain bike. I like this bike. It's in my top 25% of e-bikes that I've ridden, and it really feels good. It's a bike I intend to keep and to ride. My wife actually likes the way it looks and she likes the way it rides. So it's great for her because she weighs less than me and that 500 watt motor will do just fine. I think for $1,500, it's a pretty good value and it feels very solid to me so far. I would recommend it if you're looking for a starter e-bike and you don't want a lot of extra stuff on it, like fenders or giant fat tires or, you know, fake gas tanks or anything like that. This bike is a good way to go because it feels more like a bike than an e-bike, even though it has that e-bike power. Let me know what you think of the Hovsco HovRanger below, or any other e-bike, or if you have questions, please leave them below. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. There is a link below if you want to buy this thing or check it out on their website. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.